No.
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 Yes.
No.
No.
No. So, some of them do, but the majority no.
Those were the answers of 16 team reporters when I asked them, do you feel your team's fan base wants the tank to possibly get Lafreniere? We asked that question, how their team will fare in against their play-in round opponent, which player on their team could be an X factor for the entire playoffs, and many more. Enjoy this play-in round preview episode. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Wojciarowski, and the mic is always on. You can find me on Twitter at Russian98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on those three dots in your podcasting app and share our show with 3 hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website. Go to jablamsports.com. You can see all our podcasts and even game notes for every episode. You'll get tidbits and links, and of course, even the reporters that are on this show specifically. You can click on that and get them on Twitter. For our podcast, click on podcasts and then our hockey show specifically. What do we have this episode? Well, as you know it, this is our special play-in preview episode. It's a double episode. This is episode 1. Episode 2 will drop in 2 days. Today, the Eastern Conference teams that are in the play-in round. Reporters joining us from Florida all the way to Montreal. But first, for Trending Now this week, we bring in my guest, John Barr. He's the man behind the account at 2 Seattle. That's NHL2 Seattle, and the website NHL2Seattle.com. That's where you can reach him. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. How busy was your day yesterday, the unveiling of the Kraken?
It was pretty crazy, right? We got a little teaser the night before. Mm-hmm. It was clear that they were going to unveil the team name at 9 a.m. on Thursday, and so I didn't get much sleep. Right, I was pretty excited, and then the buzz started well before 9 a.m. and people were getting excited. Articles were starting to talk about it. Nationwide and in a way worldwide, right? Or definitely North America, obviously. And so then when it dropped, they had an NHL Seattle or the Kraken, Seattle Kraken had a bunch of content lined up, interviews with people from Adidas. Yeah. But I was getting pinged left and right by tons of different people too, because there's certain media outlets that wanted to talk to me because they know I've put so much effort into this over the years. And so it was pretty crazy. I must have got a couple hundred texts yesterday and tons of messages, in social media. And it was pretty insane day.
Yeah. Congratulations on getting a team in Seattle. This is fabulous. I know for me, I don't know. I was really excited. I don't know if it's because we're going through this pandemic and everything and we're all bottled up right now, and then we're like, oh, it's a sports thing. Oh my God, it's a new franchise. Oh my God, they're doing it tomorrow. Oh my God, I have to pay attention. I'm flipping through my TV. I'm here in Toronto, Canada. I'm flipping through my TV. What channel is it on? What's going on? I go on Twitter. Oh my God, it's on Twitter. Then I go on Twitter. There's over 45,000 people following it on Twitter, the unveiling of the name.
Yeah, the timing was it was really well done, right? And and the fans were getting a little frustrated, that they weren't releasing the name. But I think given the situation, the timing wasn't right. I think they originally probably intended to do it right before the Stanley Cup playoffs would have normally done, like right before, like so early April. I think that was they didn't share that, but I'm pretty sure that was the target.
Yeah.
But obviously a pandemic, Then you have Black Lives Matter. Like, you just can't do it. And not to mention, it would have been great for a news story because the sports fans are kind of, starving for this right now.
Yeah.
But it would not have gotten the same mass appeal that was talked about yesterday, and is still today is even more of that. Like, there's more dialogue, and I'm getting pinged, and there's just a lot of, and I'm talking to you. So clearly there's still a lot of interest. I think a month ago it would have died, within a couple hours of the announcement. And so I think the timing was great right before the Stanley Cup playoffs start or the restart happens. And so that the timing is just perfect.
Yeah. All right. Tell us about your journey. The 9 years, grinding, trying to bring a team there. Tell us all about it.
Well, I had no idea what this would amount to. I had no idea where I was going. I was just, 9 years ago, I just thought Seattle was a great spot for the NHL. I'm a huge fan, obviously. And, the city is awesome. And I just said, somebody needs to be this kind of voice to help bring NHL to Seattle, whether it be, it's probably more traditional blogging back then. And then just kind of talking about it, understanding the situation. But I had no idea which way it was going to go. And so, I remember, when I was right out of college, somebody said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So I just literally moved forward, tried to build kind of knowledge about what it took to bring a team here, kind of connected the fan base, because we're all rooting for different teams, right? And so it's hard to even connect with hockey fans here, because there's tons of Canucks fans here. There's tons of Chicago fans, and I'm friends with more people from Toronto than probably Oregon, right? To put that in perspective. But that's just my network. But there's people that are fans of all teams. And so it's hard to like come together and kind of watch games together. I mean, I like going to the bar, drinking with the boys and watching some games, but for the most part, we're all rooting for different teams. And so that's been challenging, but it's connecting people too. And I think people started to realize how big of a fan base we have here. We do have WHL hockey, right? So the Seattle Thunderbirds and Everett Silvertips play here. So there's quite the base here already, but it's connecting them. And then, there were times where you need to show up in city council meetings, right? And creating that kind of group or that network and that community of hockey fans made it a little easier to kind of rally people, because the city council members don't know there's a hockey fan base, because we don't have a team, right, to talk about, and everybody's rooting for a different team. But like showcasing and showing that hockey is worth doing this for, like there's a lot of fans here, was pretty important, and it was an important role. And I don't know how, at the end of the day, I don't know how much influence I had over this. But I connected people, started building the fan base, and people started to become more interested in the sport. And then when we had that big ticket drive, when we released the ticket drive, which was before we were awarded the team, that had another huge impact. And I'd like to think that I had some influence on that, whether it be grouping people together, kind of creating this community, if you will, across social platforms, but also kind of out in person. We'd have watch parties over the years. We'd, holiday parties, like any kind of excuse that we could try to all get together. And there are people that I didn't know, right? But we kind of connected online and in real life. It's just been a lot of fun journey. And yesterday was like another kind of crazy milestone that I'm like, holy crap, is this really happening? Because I didn't know where I was going or where this was headed.
On behalf of NHL fans, sports fans, and people in Seattle, I want to thank you for helping bring this amazing achievement.
Oh yeah, man. Well, thanks to Canada for supplying this sport to me, because I didn't know about it. I grew up in California and didn't know much about it when I grew up there. And then it wasn't until later that I found it. So thank you. Thanks to the NHL fans for being welcoming, I should say.
So let's get to that, the name and everything. How do you like the name, the Kraken?
I've over the years, I've realized that I'm going to like the team no matter what. right? And so mentally, I also kind of disconnected myself from having a favorite in the name game. And I always equated it to like figuring out where you're going to spend the money before winning the lottery. And I said, oh, well, let's just win the lottery before we start thinking about team name. But mentally, I kind of distanced myself from the name game. But obviously I'd see the discussion and dialogue online all the time. And so I think Kraken was probably the fan favorite. Now, it wasn't like 50% of the vote, if you will, but it was definitely the most talked about. But the name in general was easily the most divisive kind of subject in the topic of bringing a team here. And so no matter what they would have picked, there would have been some people that hated it, right? And so, but when I saw it, I was like, okay, cool, this is cool. But the encompassing of that jersey and that logo and the colors and kind of the hype video, it got me really excited about the entire package. I'm pretty impressed with what they delivered there. And I think they knocked it out of the park and probably couldn't have gone any better, honestly. I don't drink the Kool-Aid a lot. I like to kind of stand away and kind of be objective opinion, but I think they knocked it out of the park. I know there's people that hate the name. Okay, no problem. You're going to hate whatever, whether it be steelhead, sockeyes, Metropolitans, totems. I mean, orcas were talked about, sea lions, like the list was long. People would have hated all of those, or there had been a group of people that hated all of those.
Yep.
And I think this is the best one, all things considering, and they did a great job.
I really liked the Kraken. I think the name is great, and I was applauding and I was excited that they chose the Kraken. Another name I kind of thought of, but then I realized that the female soccer team has it, is the Reign. I thought that would have been a really cool name.
Yeah, the Reign. Seawolves were also, but it's there's a professional rugby team here. And there was also people lobbying for the Seattle Thunderbirds to give their name to the NHL club, but I don't think that would have been the best move. It's good to create your own history. The Thunderbirds have like an amazing logo, if you ask me. But the Reign would have been cool. It's been I've seen them all. And at one time I thought maybe they'll just do something totally new, but that would have pissed off everybody.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit of the history of the name Kraken. I know you were telling me before, a couple of years ago, that came into perspective.
Yeah. So it's, I know they, this ownership group kind of started going through the process of figuring out the names, and some of these names were already out there. Kraken's been out there, but what people don't realize is it started to get momentum back in 2014. So put that in perspective on, we didn't even get awarded a team until I think it was December 2018.
Yeah.
And so this started kind of gaining steam back in 2014, and it was very, very unique back then. And so it went from nothing, because it wasn't discussed early, because people were kind of, we should call it the Metropolitans, which is one of the PCHA teams that won the Stanley Cup. But Kraken started to get momentum. And so I just don't think people realize how long people have been talking about the Kraken. And it's been that long. I look back at my historical tweets and there's a lot of references to Kraken back in 2013, 2014.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
All right. I love the logo. I really think the secondary logo is fabulous and really neat with the Seattle needle in the anchor. I think that one's really cool. And I know there's already talk about a third and a fourth jersey and going back to maybe the Metropolitans, as you mentioned. I don't know. What do you think about all the different logos and then maybe even having a third or fourth jersey?
Well, I think that anchor is top shelf, right? It's pretty impressive, and you can totally see that kind of showing up on a third jersey somewhere, or more prevalent, or who knows, right? Even on a hat. And then just today there was a image of somebody's tattoo that essentially combined the two. And I'm just like, wow, that is like, again, less than 24 hours later, it's next level stuff, right? And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. the S is kind of classic, and it's a kind of a nod to the Metropolitans who had a similar S. So that's definitely their intent there, and there's some cool features part of that main logo, but that anchor is going to kind of go a long way too. And who knows, like you can imagine with the tentacles, they can kind of integrate a little bit more with the jersey down the road. There's not a lot of flair on that at least initial jersey concept, but we won't know the final jersey for a while, because I think they release those jerseys kind of in tandem with the rest of the league that the league might be rolling out for the 2021-22 season. So time will tell if that holds up, but I'm pretty sure that main logo is staying.
Nice. I'm glad you mentioned how the jersey looks little bit plain. I like it. I like the dark blue jersey, but it needs something more, in my opinion. That's why I like the white more. It just adds a little bit more color to it. And I know I'll probably have to pick up the white jersey when you guys steal Hyman from us.
Yeah. For the games. Yeah. So I like the white, and it seems like people really like the white. I like the dark one too. Usually I like the dark jerseys of a pair, because white's pretty generic, right?
Yeah.
But most people, I think, are saying like the white jerseys like the best one of the two. So I think, who knows? I'm not a super jersey nerd, but those things are beautiful out of the gate. And maybe I'm biased. Well, let's make it clear, I am very biased. So.
All right. A lot happened yesterday. There was a lot of presentations daily. What was something really interesting that stood out later on in all the presentations?
Yeah, I mean, they interviewed Ron Francis, which I thought was pretty cool. They interviewed Cami Granata, who's for listeners that might not know, is one of our pro scouts. Ray Ferraro jumped on, which I love. I mean, we don't get his games a lot unless you get the package, but I love watching Ray Ferraro, or I love watching games where Ray Ferraro's a color guy.
Yeah.
And so he had some really good perspectives, kind of more from his analyst role and his color role. But I loved his perspective. So I thought that was pretty neat. They met with, the thing is, I can't narrow it down to any one item, but they had people from Adidas that kind of went through the process and the design kind of principles around it. They gave a lot of background on some information around, the origins and, a bunch of other things. And then there's Tim Lewicki's also made the rounds, maybe not on the main broadcast, but he was definitely talking to some sports groups up in Canada. And he kind of foreshadowed that there might be that third or fourth jersey, and then also talked about the AHL affiliate in Palm Springs. And so there was just so much news, and I'm probably not even catching up to half of it so far, because there was so much out there.
For sure. I love the Twitter account already. They posted in their name title, "Now that we have a name, we're strategizing all the ways to draft your favorite player."
Yeah, it's good to have that little bickering. One speaking of Twitter, I loved the Vegas Golden Knights tweet yesterday. It says, "Welcome to the original 32." So, just because we're expansion kind of buddies and everybody talks about the original 6, but no, let's talk about the original 32. I think that's a good moniker.
Again, you can find him on Twitter at NHL2Seattle, TO Seattle. John, thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
All right, and thank you also, and congratulations for getting the team in Seattle. All right, I'm really happy that we got a surprise guest in John to talk about the Kraken. It was really cool to see how he had developing all those years to slowly get a team in Seattle. So I'm happy for that, and I'm glad that everything turned out really well, the logo, the team, and everything. So that's great. But now let's get to the play-in preview episodes. All our guests are on coming up now, 8 of them. Enjoy this, folks. Now talking Pittsburgh Penguins hockey, we have Josh Yoha. He's a Pittsburgh Penguins currently beat writer with The Athletic. You can find him on Twitter at @JoshYo_PGH. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good. All right. Yes, like we were already talking about. You don't think at all the Penguins fan base might want Lafreniere?
Well, there's always a segment of people who will be rooting for something like that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think if the Penguins were, just a fringe playoff team, that maybe some more would. But I think most of the fan base think they have a reasonable shot to win the Stanley Cup this year, or at least to make a run. So I believe the majority of the people are going in that camp, although there's been no shortage of star power here over the years. So everybody here knows what a couple of superstars can do to a franchise, that's for sure.
For sure. What do you think their chances are in the play-in round against the Habs?
Oh, very good. The Penguins are just a way better team than Montreal. And I wonder how much Montreal really wants to win this series. I realize the players will want to, of course, but I don't know that the front office is necessarily all that interested, given who the number 1 overall pick will be and given where he is from. And I get that, I do, but I just the Penguins are healthy. They have Jake Gensel back in the lineup, which is a really big deal. They're a good hockey team. Maybe Montreal has the edge in goal, and that's always scary in something like a 5-game series. But I just think the Penguins are way better.
For sure. Hornqvist looks like he's good to go as well.
He is. He missed the first week of camp. He had been exposed to somebody who had been exposed to COVID-19, so they decided to keep him quarantined for an additional week and did a bunch of tests, and he's good to go. He actually practiced for the first time on I think it was day 9 of camp. So he's healthy. He looks fine.
Yep. And I know some of the Penguins fans might want Jerry in the pipes. Who are they gonna go with? Is it probably Murray? And how long is that leash?
I think Murray will be the guy. In fact, I was just on the phone with Jim Rutherford about an hour ago, and he said that's still what he expects. Tristan Jarry's been the better goaltender in training camp. There's no question about it. He's just been better. And he's a good player. He made it to the All-Star game. That wasn't a fluke. And Murray is coming off of a kind of a below average season, but he's the guy with the 2 Stanley Cup rings. He has certainly pulled it off in the playoffs before. So I think he will be the guy. But to answer your question, I think the leash is really short right now, not just because he hasn't played all that well, but because they know how good Jarry is. So if Murray has some horrendous game against the Canadiens in game 1, will we see Jarry in game 2? It wouldn't shock me.
Wow. All right. How is Crosby feeling?
I think he's fine. He missed a few days of practice. I was told he had some soreness. I don't think it was an injury. If there was a game that night, I think he would have played. He had the sports hernia surgery in November, and he returned. He missed almost 3 months with that injury, 2.5, I think it was. And he looked okay when he came back, but he didn't quite look like Crosby. And that's just a difficult injury to come back from. And I wonder if he's still having some soreness from that. So it won't be enough to keep him out of the lineup. I think he's fine, but will he be operating at peak Crosby 100% level? I can't answer that question. I don't know. But I've also been told that they don't think it's serious. It's really more precautionary than anything. So he's going to be in the lineup, and I don't make it a habit of betting against him very often.
I see. Malkin, does he like his line mates? What line is he playing with right now, or he's set to play with?
He has had a fabulous training camp. I mean, he looks as motivated as I've seen him in a long time. He is moving beautifully right now. Beware of number 71. He's just got that look right now. His line mates will be the recently acquired Jason Zucker on the left side and Brian Rust on the right side. Has just had a wonderful season. Malkin, as great of a player as he is, he probably doesn't skate the way he did 10 years ago. He's about to hit 34. They love to have him with fast wingers. They think that brings out the best in him. And Zucker and Rust are 2 guys who can absolutely fly. They've looked really good in camp. Zucker's a good player. For a second line, I mean, that's a first line for most NHL teams, I would guess. Mm-hmm. So to have them going against second defensive pairings, that certainly could be an advantage for the Penguins.
Sounds good. Who is possibly this playoff run's Jake Gensel? Who is that X factor for the Penguins?
Oh boy, Well, I would say Jake Gensel, but I guess he's not a rookie anymore, so you don't want me to answer it that way. Keep your eye on Jared McCann. He's the third-line center for the Penguins. He is a streaky player. He didn't score a goal for the last 21 games of the regular season, but before then, he was just lights out. He's had a really good camp. He's fast. He's got a great shot. He'll be on the third line with Patrick Marleau and Patrick Hornquist, which is a pretty darn good third line on paper. Those guys have never played together before, though, so there's kind of an element of mystery with that line. But I'm telling you, McCann, still a young guy, just turned 24. He's a big-time talent, and I said Malkin gets to play against second pairings most of the time. Well, McCann will get to play against third pairings. Mm-hmm. And with a couple of guys like Marleau and Hornquist who certainly know how to play this time of year, I would keep your eye on McCann. He's an interesting player.
How far can they go? Will they go all the way?
I don't want to sound like a homer here, but I think could win the whole thing. I'll give you a couple of quick reasons. Number one, Jake Gensel's back. He's a 40-goal scorer. There aren't many of those. So you get him back into the lineup. To me, that's a really, really big deal. They are completely healthy now. And their best players, when you look at Crosby, Malkin, Chris Letang, Hornquist, these are all guys who are over 30. Well, they've had 4 months to rest. They've had 4 months to, get prepared for this. And this is as fresh as we will ever see them in a postseason. And I think Crosby and Malkin are probably viewing this as a real opportunity to win one more Stanley Cup. Their biggest problem, two things. Can Matt Murray be the guy he was in 16 and 17? We know how important that position is. And also the Eastern Conference is just a bear. I mean, there are so many good teams in the East. So whoever comes out of the East, my gosh, it will take some doing. But I would keep your eye on the Penguins. I just have a real good feel about what I'm seeing in training camp. And also, they've got a great coach in Mike Sullivan. And I think in an unorthodox tournament like we're about to witness, I think having a good coach is a really big deal.
All right. Thank you, Josh, for coming on the show. You can find him on The Athletic. Thank you, Josh.
My pleasure.
Now to get a look into Rangers hockey, we have Ryan Mead. He's the host of Blue Shirts Breakaway at The Athletic and a founder of the Church of Kakko. You can find that website, churchofkakko.com. You can find him also on Twitter, OOH Ryan Mead. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me, Peter. I appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about your website and Kappo Kakko. How's he doing?
Oh, Kappo Kakko, the Lord and Savior himself had maybe one of the roughest years in NHL history when it comes to analytics. The difference between our Artemi Panarin and Kappo Kakko couldn't have been, they're just two lines pointing away from each other at this point. But I still believe in the talent. And if you'd like to still believe in the talent, at churchofkakko.com, brand new merch, including towels, blankets, and pillows up today.
Nice. All right. Well, my main question is, and everybody wants to know again, do you think the Rangers fan base want to tank for a chance, or at least the team to tank to get Lafreniere?
So the answer is no, because I think this fan base is sort of hungry for a deep playoff run. You know how New York sports goes. You want to win, even when you don't really have a shot. And that's really what the Rangers are going to be doing. Do they have a shot to win the Stanley Cup Finals? If Igor, who will still be the starting goalie, by the way, despite Hank's pretty much incredible play in camp so far. If Igor can recapture his magic that he's had in the middle of the season, and our type of Panarin and Mika Zibanejad go into unstoppable force mode, they could do it. But the defense and the young age of what the Rangers put on the ice every single night will definitely catch up to them, especially in the second round when we'll play either Tampa Bay or Boston. So the Rangers might not have a choice but to tank for Lafreniere at this point. The Hurricanes are quite a good team despite the Rangers sweeping them during the season. I don't think the fan base in general wants to tank, but I do think it's something that every fan is sort of torn on currently.
Yeah, it was good. That was a good answer. You pretty much covered everything. I think we're done with the interview.
Done. This is what I do.
That's it. You've covered everything. We don't need to talk about anything anymore. All right. Ryan, thank you for coming on the show. No.
Okay. All right. It was just the easiest podcast interview I've ever done.
All right. We all know how amazing Panarin is, and he could very much possibly win the Hart for MVP, of course, of the season. Yep. But I don't know how good people know Zibanejad is. 41 goals. He's no slouch. He's playing on a different line than Panarin. Like, I don't know how people don't know how good Zibanejad is.
So there's like a podcast or sports podcasting like kind of trope, like how good is this guy, or like has the love gone too far? And I'm actually in the opinion of the love has gone too far for me because of Zibanejad, especially when it comes to Ranger fans this year. Because there's all these memes all the time on Twitter. It's like, who's this player? It's like underrated talent or whatever. Mika Zibanejad in Rangers fan base eyes is very appropriately rated. He's probably above rated now because of the way he's broke out this year.
Yeah.
He is no slouch. A certified number one center in the NHL, no doubt about it. Scoring ability he led the league this year in the percentage of goals scored in the league, because I think his was like 0.72, but he only played 56 games comparatively to the other higher goal scorers in the league. He is and is developed into not only a tremendous passer and developer of offense in the NHL, but also a tremendous scorer. I think if you look back at Rangers history, there's another player called Adam Graves who did something similar to this in 1994. I'm looking to see the repeat year from Mika Zibanejad next year to see if he is this player permanently or if it was just a hot year. I think he is a tremendous asset, the second best player on offense in the New York Rangers lineup currently, and cannot be understated. But among you New York Ranger fans, he's appropriately rated. I think other people in the league are just finding out about him.
Yeah. What are the chances for the Rangers in the play-in round against the Hurricanes?
I would say if you're a Ranger fan, you think you have a really good shot. The Rangers swept the Hurricanes this year, despite two of the games pretty much being outplayed from start to finish. Henrik Lundqvist was one game, and one the game was Igor. They both stole those games entirely from the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes, statistically and analytically, and I'm not a math guy, but I read up on this stuff, absolutely dominated the Rangers from start to finish in both those games. But yet the Rangers swept the season series. I think the Hurricanes are probably going to be a different team in the playoffs. But as I said earlier, all it takes is a hot goalie, which is like the most lazy NHL analysis you can do. But the depth of the Hurricanes, and especially the depth of their defensive pairings. I mean, I know Dougie Hamilton didn't practice one day this week. We'll see if he gets recovered and all that. But I think you can really make a strong case that the third pair for the Hurricanes is better than the first pair for the New York Rangers, which is going to be an absolute issue, which is why the boring analysis of does this fall onto Igor Shesterkin, does this fall onto Henrik Lundqvist, is actually for what's the right answer in this case.
Yeah. You mentioned the defense. I guess a lot of people don't think it's very good. Let us know a little bit more about the Harvard grad, Adam Fox.
Yeah, I can tell you a lot about Adam Fox. Probably should have been second in the Calder rankings this year. Personal opinion, obviously I'm biased, cover the team, etc. Just a tremendous, broke the Harvard points record. I think he had 102 points or some ridiculous amount. The Rangers traded for him with Carolina, very funnily, they're going to be playing, who they also traded Brady Shea to. So there is a lot of different little storylines going into this series. Adam Fox is a tremendous talent who's already playing at an all-star level. The evaluation for him was that his actual monetary value this year was $11 million as a player. And he didn't finish in the top three for the Calders. So there you go. He generates the offense. He runs the first power play despite signing Jacob Trouba to an $8 million 7-year deal this year. There was a lot of times where Adam was running the power play. He's a tremendous defender. He creates offense. And the sell on Adam Fox before he got here was, hey, he's a really high floor player. He's probably going to be an NHLer right away, but he's never going to be this elite defenseman. Turns out we were wrong. Guy has incredible hockey IQ, makes all the right passes, and really, it's hard to see him make a wrong play. It's very strange. He's otherworldly good at a young age.
Wow. All right, and then between the pipes, you already mentioned Ilya Shesterkin and Lundqvist. How long is the leash for Shesterkin, and is it possible Henrik could get some games?
This is what's so crazy about this situation is that the Rangers do have three goalies that could all start. They really do. Igor Shesterkin is a tremendous tremendous talent, and the Rangers fans have been waiting for him for a couple of different years for him to come over and sort of claim his tsardom or princedom, whatever you want to call it, from Henrik Lundqvist. Henrik Lundqvist, in my opinion, and from what I've heard from beat writers at this point, is performing pretty well in camp. They had a scrimmage game today in the first half. Igor let up 4 goals today. This is we're recording this on July 24th, so Igor had a kind of a rough day. But I got to be honest with you, the leash is pretty long. Yeah. I know the Rangers haven't said this. This is my opinion. I just cover the squad. To me, they're going with Igor Shesterkin, who was their starting goalie, unless he's totally frazzled and just can't stop anything the next couple of days. Then they'll put Henrik in. I haven't even mentioned Alexander Georgiev, who is on most nights just up there with the other two. Just an incredible talent who the team is overloaded with goalie talent. I think Igor will start all the games versus the Carolina Hurricanes unless there's a lot of turmoil and he lets in a lot of softies.
We're going to have to have you come back on the show for sure, maybe after the playoffs, and talk more about their 3-pronged horse between the pipes and if Georgiev might get traded finally or not. We'll talk about that maybe later. All right, playoffs, more talk. Kreider, this is usually when he looks his game and he looks the best. All goalies, watch out. Is there anyone else that could also maybe break out like Kreider has in previous years for this playoffs run?
So let me talk about Kappo Kakko.
Okay.
I think this might be the time. It's actually the time for a lot of the young kids. There are children young players on the roster, such as Keandre Miller, but he won't be playing a special exception. Kravtsov, despite being on the roster and has played these practice games, will not make it. The 2 players I think you should look out for if you're just watching the Rangers and don't know the squad is Kappo Kakko, obviously the 2nd overall pick. Kane has come back to camp, and the thing that people don't realize is when we went back to Finland, rinks were open. He got to practice this entire time. He got to weight lift. He didn't take time off the ice. So from what I've heard, he looks faster, but and he looks stronger, etc., more on the puck. But that's just beat writer talk. But I think this will be his chance to shine and sort of take a step forward. The other player is Filip Chytil, who will be centering Kappo Kakko on the 3rd line. And Filip Chytil, from all reports, again, best shape of his life, kind of boring analysis, where he's come into camp. He looks faster. He looks more really sort of put together. So the combination of Chytil to Kakko will be sort of the 2 players that will determine if the Rangers can make a deep run or not. Because if they can perform to a higher level, I seriously think this team could go pretty far, maybe Eastern Conference Finals, if everything goes right. If they really don't get the offense going, after the first 2 lines, the Rangers have almost nothing going on.
So that's how you pronounce his name, Filip Chytil?
Chytil, yeah. Trust me, my pronunciation is total crap. So if I didn't cover the Rangers every single day, if you named other hockey players, I butcher it every single week on my show.
Nice. All right. And do you think the Rangers can actually go far with this team for this year's playoffs?
No, I think their goal, and John Davidson, the president of the New York Rangers, have said this for a long time. It is about winning the Stanley Cup. It's always about winning the Stanley Cup, but this is about putting a team together that can compete in and out for many years. And the reason for that is, and this is my opinion, not his, and I'm sure it is his too, is when you compete in the NHL, it's a crapshoot. And every single year you see 8 seeds, see 6 seeds, you see all these random teams that get in, get hot, and win. And that's what it takes. Like, yes, having the good talent matters, but you see what happens to the Tampa Bay Lightning. You see how the Bruins get so close and lose. But the Bruins have had tremendous success, so hands up. They've done that. But all it takes is getting to the dance and getting hot. And if you have a really solid team that can do that for 8 years in a row, 9 years in a row without rebuilding, like the Bruins have done, like the Blackhawks did for a couple different years, you could really make the best of it. And I think that's what Davis is trying to do. So I don't believe this is the timeline, but the Rangers re-signed Chris Kreider. They are no longer rebuilding. And I believe next year and a couple of years after, they will be trying to compete for the cup as hard as possible.
Well, maybe this year the 12th team can win the cup.
The 12th team, I believe, in the Eastern Conference is the Montreal Canadiens, with the most overrated player in hockey, Carey Price. So I don't believe so.
All right. You can find him on Twitter, Ryan Mead. Ryan, thank you for coming on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Now some Maple Leafs hockey talk. We have Joshua Kloke. He's a staff writer at Athletic TO, obviously writing for the Leafs and Toronto FC. You can find him on Twitter at Joshua Kloke. Welcome back to the show, Joshua.
Thanks for having me.
Do you think this Leafs fan base wants to tank for a chance to get Lafreniere?
No, I don't. You know, he's a special player. He may end up being like a generational talent, but I mean, what the Leafs have is a group of players that are either in or entering their prime. They haven't won, a playoff round in a very long time, a really, really, really long time. And you have a group of players that just on talent alone should contend for, a late round spot. So tanking, no, I mean, I get what having a bona fide NHL star on an entry level deal can do. But I don't know if we're talking from the fan perspective, I don't know what another year of kind of heartache in terms of losing a playoff round would do to this fan base. Because I think there's a lot of cynicism as well in terms of the team that Kyle Dubas has built. It's very top heavy, and it's heavy on skill and speed, and maybe not as heavy on physicality, which I'm sure a portion of the fan base wants. So no, I don't think tanking for Lafreniere is what Leafs fans want, or what the team should do either.
Yeah. Well, speaking about Dubas and this type of team that they've built, the skilled team, with a playoffs kind of like this, it seems like it might fit their game a little bit in terms of teams might not be fully physical this coming, tournament, this return to play playoffs, really, you would think.
Yeah, I mean, they're a team, what I like about this team is that they've had trouble winning that fourth, first round game, obviously, in the last few years. And this is a team that just on skill alone should steal 3 games in that first round, right? Like, I think Freddie is good to steal you 1 game. And I think, again, you look at the talent up front with Matthews and Marner and Nylander, especially, who I think, just based off what I've seen in this training camp and based on the season he was having, should, maybe steal a game on his own. But the talent alone suggests that a shorter first round or play-in round, or whatever we're calling this, should help the team. So yeah, I think a shorter playoff round definitely does benefit the Leafs.
Speaking about Matthews, how do you feel the organization and Matthews has dealt with not getting the opportunity, but it coming out that he got coronavirus? It wasn't by his thought or what he wanted, obviously.
Yeah, I just think that I think Kyle Dubas mentioned in another interview that he would have preferred to have kept it quiet or have let the player make that admission himself. And that's kind of what the NHL has tried to do in terms of the way they've structured injury news now. They're just basically calling it, players unfit to play. So, I mean, he maybe didn't look as strong as he had throughout the season at the beginning of this training camp, but it really didn't take him long to round into form. So, I mean, there's always going to be gripes about the media and that kind of thing, and that's really not I don't think you want to waste a lot of time on that debate. I mean, if we're talking about Matthews, towards the end of this training camp, he really started to look like, that dangerous scorer that he is. So I think, the organization is probably just keen to move past it and make sure that he's, in a good spot mentally heading into the playoffs, which he looks to be. I mean, he's a competitive player. He wants to score goals. He wants to be one of the best players in the NHL. And this is the time when he can prove it. I mean, the games are going to be strange to start, right? Yeah. They're going to be fast. They're going to be loose, right? There's not going to be a ton of structure, I think, in this opening round. So in that case, you want those game-breaking shooters that can just take a game on its own, right? And break down defenses that maybe haven't had enough time to kind of settle into a rhythm and settle into that structure that coaches are trying to drill in. So yeah, I think Matthews could be really dangerous in this first playoff round.
That's good to hear for the Leafs. Freddie Anderson, you could say he's been a top 5 goaltender since he's joined the Maple Leafs organization. This year was a bit of an up and down year. Do you think he can rebound now coming into the playoffs? How does he look? And he's also never been able to, in my opinion at least, be that better goalie in the playoffs so far in these few years the Leafs have been in the playoffs. Can he be?
Can he be? Sure. Like we've seen glimpses of Freddie Anderson being that all-world goalie. I mean, his name pops up in Vezina discussions from time to time. I mean, is it consistent? No. But is he a top 10 goalie in the NHL? I would think so. Maybe on the fringe, but he's there. And I think Freddie has the ability, if he's in the right headspace, to steal a game. And Freddie's a guy that once he gets rolling, like I don't like to use the word streaky, but that's kind of what he reminds me of, right? As a goalie that can kind of, really get into a groove. And we usually see that in November, right? When Freddie really heats up. And so I guess that's the concern, right? Are you going to see October Freddie or November Freddie? So I don't know. I think that's a bit of an X factor heading into this series, but I think if Freddie is confident and he makes those first few saves early, he can really get into a groove, and I think that's obviously what the Leafs are hoping for.
Mikheyev, he was out most of the year with his injury. How good does he look? He won the MVP for Phase 3 for the Leafs organization, eh?
Yeah, he looks great. He just looks like he is a few things. He just looks super energetic every time he's on the puck, right? He just looks like a player that is just, for lack of a better analysis, just ready to play, right? A player that has just been chomping at the bit to play. And that's kind of the style of game that he has to begin with. But it's just kind of this great kind of like trade deadline acquisition for the Leafs to get him back at this time. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's important to note is like he maybe didn't enter the league as a skilled player. He was kind of that like energy, maybe third line guy. But he looks like he can really keep up with, Tavares and Marner on a line. And that's important to have guys that can play with skilled players. Maybe they're not the most skilled players to begin with, but if they can kind of seamlessly adapt into that structure and into that role, it's only going to benefit them. It's only going to benefit the team. So yeah, he looks good. He looks like a player that wants it. He's kind of I think he's in a good space, mentally too. Every time you see him, he's smiling, he's happy to be back, right? This is a player that, I wonder if there were times where he wondered if he was going to play the game again. Mm-hmm. Because it was a devastating, weird freak injury. Mm-hmm. So when you have a player like that, it's just happy to be back. I think we're seeing the results of that, right?
Yeah, Mikheyev looks good, and he could be a big X factor for the Leafs for this run. What are their chances against the Blue Jackets?
I would say good, not great. I mean, it's interesting. These are pretty contrasting styles, right? I mean, the Blue Jackets play that physical game, and I think that's the biggest storyline heading into this series is how the Leafs are going to deal with Columbus's physical brand of hockey when, the Leafs don't necessarily play the most physical style. So I like their chances because it's a shortened series. I would say Leafs in 5. That's what I've been kind of sticking with. But it wouldn't surprise me, or I don't think it should surprise a lot of people if the Leafs lose this one, maybe in 5, because there are still questions about the defense, and there are questions about Freddie, and there are questions about, whether this team can win in the playoffs. But honestly, it just takes one round. I honestly think it just takes one round for this team to kind of get over that hump. But yeah, I like their chances. I don't know, 55%, if we're looking for a number. So that's kind of where I'm at with them right now.
Wow. And if they do win that round versus the Blue Jackets, do you think this team can go really far?
It's such a weird playoffs, right? It's such a weird setup because you have teams coming back that have had very little time together, and you have teams like the Leafs that have had a lot of time together in phase 2. And I wonder if that's something that they're going to keep, in their back pocket, and something that might turn out to help them in the long run is just how long they were together in phase 2, working in these small group workouts. Because they were there for a long time and players were together. So, a long run possible. I do think it, I think there's enough talent there that they should go deep, but yeah, we'll see.
We will see. You can find him on Twitter at Joshua Kloke. Joshua, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's discuss some Canes hockey now. We have Adam Gold. He's the host of the sports show, The Adam Gold Show in Carolina, and has the Canes Corner podcast at WRAL Sport Fan. You can find him on Twitter, @GoldFan. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. So like I was talking about, do you think this Canes fan base want to tank or get a chance for Lafreniere?
Nope, not a chance. This is a team and a fan base that believes they have a chance to win a Stanley Cup, and there is zero chance that they want that. If it ultimately happened, that would be a decent consolation prize, obviously, but no interest in it.
What are their chances against the New York Rangers?
I think excellent. I mean, they really are. I think they're excellent against the Rangers. I know the Hurricanes' record against the Rangers over the last dozen years has not been good, and that's putting it mildly. I believe the last time Henrik Lundqvist lost a game to the Rangers, I think he was in the 3rd grade, or rather to the Hurricanes. Look, he's been amazing against Carolina. The Rangers have pretty much been good except for the last couple of years. So that has something to do with it too. But playoffs are different. Carolina got swept by Washington last year in the regular season and ended up winning in Game 7 in DC in double overtime. I'm not concerned about that. I think Carolina's better than New York. Carolina's got their questions, but I think they're better than New York. And I can't wait for it to start next Saturday, noon. Can't wait.
It is really getting excited. But how does Dougie Hamilton look right now?
Well, Hamilton, got hurt in Columbus in February, and that kind of threw everybody for a loop because he was a Norris Trophy candidate at that point, and he's not even Carolina's best defenseman. That's the thing. I mean, Jacob Slavin's their best defenseman. That's not close. I mean, all respect to Dougie Hamilton. He broke non-weight-bearing bone in his leg and was on target to come back in April. Then, of course, the pandemic shuts everything down. So he's been skating for 2 months. But yesterday, Wednesday, he left the ice during practice as the team is terming, some discomfort. And he did not practice Thursday either. So, but they're, based on the protocol, they're not even allowed to tell you what the injuries are. They can't even say lower body or upper body. It's unable to participate. And that's what he's listed at, unable to participate. That would be a blow to Carolina, but they're incredibly deep on the blue line because going into the series against the Rangers, there were going to be 2, even 3 NHL defensemen that weren't going to be able to play because they're so deep with the trades that they made at the deadline because of injuries to Brett Pesce and Dougie Hamilton. Pesce might even be able to come back down the road. We'll see. His injury was more severe. But, I mean, Hamilton's an elite offensive player, and he's a game changer that way, and they would miss that.
So you've added some players. Who might fill in for Hamilton?
I don't know if Sami Vatanen would play top minutes with Jacob Slavin. He might. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, Vatanen is a legit top 4 defenseman when he's healthy. Carolina made the trade with New Jersey at the deadline to bring him in, and he was hurt at the time, and he had missed about 3 or 4 weeks. And the understanding was he wasn't going to be ready right away, but that he would be ready before the end of the regular season. Well, we never saw that because we never got to that. And he had trouble putting it. I guess he blocked a shot. I believe it was who was it? From Patrick Marleau, I believe, from the San Jose Sharks, who was, for a very brief moment, a Hurricane, or at least his contract belonged to the Hurricanes when they bought it from Toronto. But Vatanen never played. But he's skating, and he's healthy now. And Vatanen is a puck-moving, offensive-minded defenseman with some ability. So I don't know if he would slot in with Jacob Slavin on the top pair. I think what they would more likely do is sort of let Jacob just play more minutes, and doesn't really matter who he plays with. Because when we get to the playoffs, if Jacob Slavin isn't playing 25 minutes, then it probably isn't going well. So let Slavin play as much as he can. My guess is Joel Edmondson would play as offside with Slavin. Maybe you'll see Trevor Van Riemsdyk draw back in. And he has had some success. He was great last year until he got hurt. And he's got some playoff experience, and he's played with Slavin. But Vatanen is going to be counted on offensively to produce with if Hamilton can't play. Now, there's no indication that Hamilton won't be able to. But if Hamilton can draw back in, then Slavin and Hamilton, Brady Shea, another trade deadline acquisition from the Rangers, interestingly enough, Shea and Vatanen would probably play together, which would leave Jake Gardiner to play with, whether it's Trevor Van Riemsdyk or Joel Edmondson, a Stanley Cup champion, or Hayden Fleury. Look, there's a lot. They have a lot of options on the blue line. Not a lot of right shot options, but a lot of options.
Times are unpredictable. They're odd. Could we actually see a Svechnikov move during these playoffs?
That kid, you're talking about the Svech, right?
Yeah, the Svech, yes.
Look, that kid is special in so many ways. First of all, he's an incredible kid. He won the Steve Chason Award down here for essentially his dedication to the sport, and there's a community element to that. I mean, the kid is, I don't know how old, he's 20 years old, and he's all smiles all the time, and he works hard. That's one thing Rod Brindamore thought about right away when he started working with him, is that the kid just works. So who knows how good this kid's going to be. I mean, he has a chance to be a superstar in the league. His English is getting better too, which also helps. But yeah, he said while he was practicing it, like in training camp and things like that, he said he was going to do it in a game, and nobody believed him, and then he did it twice.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he sees the opportunity. It's part of his repertoire, man. He's going to go for it if he sees it.
Yeah, for sure. And if he's working out hard, I bet Rod the Bod must love him.
I'm telling you, yeah. It's funny. Training camp this year, there might have been a player, maybe two, that didn't come back in great shape. And Rod knows right away. I mean, you just cannot fool Rod Brindamore about that. My understanding is that even though they had about 3.5 months off before they even started skating in small groups, not a single player came back not in good shape. They were ready to go. So Rod has a way, I mean, as somebody who covers the team, I mean, I've known Rod a long time, and we're friends. And man, I mean, I'm not in great shape. I mean, I'm in better shape than I used to be, but I kind of feel almost inadequate just even talking to Rod, man. Yeah. And I suck in the gut a little bit, stand up a little taller, pull my shoulders back when I'm talking to Rod. He's a superhuman being too. But Svech has it all. He has it all, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Who could be that breakout guy this playoffs?
Wow, breakout star for Carolina. It's easy to say the same guy. Their top line is so loaded. But I do think that my covering this team and just covering the sport, your third lines are so vital when you get into a playoff series, because theoretically you got a bunch of good teams and the top lines cancel each other out. So who on that third line is going to be the X factors? And that's where Carolina has the advantage over the Rangers, I believe. I think the Rangers are two lines, and then we're not really sure what they are. And I don't think they're great defensively. But Vincent Trocheck, who was brought over from Florida in trade, and my guess is that right now, if I had to guess, I'd say his line mates are going to be Martin Necas, who is having his rookie season and has incredible ability. And I would imagine we're going to see a lot of speed really be front and center in the certainly early in the playoffs. And I think Necas has a chance to be dynamic. And it's either going to be Nino Niederreiter or Ryan Dzingel on that side. I think probably Nino. And Nino had a great regular season when they acquired him last year from Minnesota. Didn't have a great playoff. Didn't play badly, but he didn't score a lot. But I wouldn't be surprised if Nino, because he had a really down first half of the year or until pre-pandemic year. I wouldn't be surprised if Nino lit it up. But guys like Martinook and Fogle and McGinn, man, the playoffs are built on those dudes. And I think Fogle has an opportunity to do what he did last year. He's a talented kid. He's a grinder. He's all energy. He's like a baby deer, man. He's all over the place. But I'll go for third line, though. Give me the Trocheck, Necas, Niederreiter line as a potential difference maker.
For sure. How far do you think they can go, the Canes?
I mean, I've been saying it. I mean, I'm not kidding. I've been saying it for weeks. They're my pick to win the Stanley Cup. If they get, I can already see the head nods from the people watching this. Like, oh yeah, guy covers the Canes. The caveat is they need Peter Mrazek to look like Peter Mrazek did, not necessarily this year, but in March, April into May last year, when Mrazek earned himself a contract with Carolina by the way he played. Peter has a high end about him that I don't think James Reimer can get to. There are some X factors in goaltending for Carolina. Like, I wouldn't be completely shocked if we even saw Alex Nedeljkovic at some point. It would probably because of an injury like he came up. But Nedeljkovic has a high end too. But really, this is about Peter Mrazek. If they get good goaltending, I think they're as good as anybody. They're not necessarily as talented as anybody, but you don't have to be uber talented. Nobody's got more talent than Toronto, and they haven't done anything in the postseason. Tampa will tell you all about talent and how far that got them last year. They came against the determined Columbus team, and they got swept. So I love the way Carolina's makeup is, and Rod Brindamore has the ability to make everybody care as much as he does, and that is an amazing feat. And to me, it's about the head coach, and it's about Peter Mrazek. If they get those, if Mrazek plays well, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I like him.
Yep. Everybody knows of the Canes and their post-game celebrations. It's an empty stadium. How are they going to celebrate? What are they going to do now?
Oh, man. What many people don't also know is that Raleigh is also a great craft beer area. And my guess is there will be a lot of Storm Surges. And they have their own beer, Storm Brew, which is a perfectly durable light lager. Love it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it involved that. But I'm sure you'll see a bunch of online, viral videos, whether it's on TikTok or Twitter or Instagram. You'll see a lot of fans do a Storm Surge. Maybe it'll be a group Storm Surge when the games are over. But we're going to miss that. I'm going to miss PNC Arena for playoff games. I remember last year, and I was there in 2006, and I was there when they went to the playoffs in 2009, and it was deafening, and the building's great. And what they say about it is they're not making it up. It's whether it's the loudest house in the NHL, they're all loud, but it is an incredible atmosphere. for playoff hockey. I could not believe how loud it was for the first Game 3 against Washington when they skated out and they beat the pants off of the Capitals that night. It was an absolute madhouse. We're all going to miss that. So it's unfortunate for everyone because everybody loves to play. I mean, I was in Edmonton in 06 too. I covered the team on the road in the Stanley Cup Finals, and I still get chills thinking about what it was like. And I guess that it was Rexall Place, and just feeling the atmosphere in the building when the Oilers took the ice, and how the building was silent during O Canada. I mean, again, I just got chills thinking about it. So we're not going to have that, and that's unfortunate. But at least we're going to have, I think, some pretty exciting hockey.
All right. Adam, thank you for coming on the show. You can find him on Twitter at @AGoldFan. Thanks, Adam.
You got it, man. Take care.
Now time to talk some Blue Jackets hockey. We have on Jeff Svoboda. He's a Columbus Blue Jackets team reporter. You can find him on Twitter at Jackets Insider. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Like I asked earlier, do you think this Jackets fan base wants a tank for Lafreniere?
The short answer is no. I would say the majority of the fans don't want that, but there probably are some. It was such an unexpected thing to see the Blue Jackets, to see the way that the draft lottery worked out, so that if the Blue Jackets do lose to Toronto, they would obviously have that shot at the number 1 overall pick. And so that maybe kind of got you thinking a little bit. And then, to be honest with you, if you look at this Blue Jackets team, it's the youngest team that's going to be in this playoff run. It's the youngest team in the entire NHL, actually. So they've got a really good future. They've got some really great young building blocks. But the one thing they're probably missing is kind of that cornerstone offensive talent like you see on so many teams around the league. The Austin Matthewses and the Connor McDavids that we're just going to be good for a long time. The Jackets kind of are missing a little bit there. They don't have that kind of generational player. You generally have to, win the draft lottery to get a guy like that. And so you can think of, if you look in the future, you think, man, the Jackets sure would look good with Lafreniere if it were to work out that way. But at the end of the day, you're never going to obviously try to lose for that. I think people are so excited to see hockey back. You don't want to see your team, lose just to possibly get a draft pick. And certainly the players don't think that way as well. So, as you look at the future, you think, man, he would look really good in Union Blue. But at the same time, obviously, you take what you get. You're happy to have hockey back. You want to see your team win.
Yeah, you mentioned maybe getting him, a young player. How about Footy? Could he join the team? What kind of impact could he make if he does?
Yeah, and that's maybe the one really exciting young player that Blue Jackets fans just have not seen really in the NHL so far is Liam Foudy, who looks like he's going to make this team and be in the lineup when they start playing against the Maple Leafs. He's 20 years old. He played 2 games for the Jackets this year, but the way that the agreement between the NHL and the CHL works out is he was only able to come in whenever the schedule allowed. But he's a first-round draft pick in 2018, played on Canadian World Juniors team that won the gold medal, and really impressed there. I think was dominating the OHL, 68 points in 45 games, and he's one of the fastest players in the league, or at least he will be when he gets out there. So I think they have pretty high hopes for him. They think that his speed will be key against the Maple Leafs, who are also a fast team. I've said first-round draft pick. He's also got the ability to score as well. I think he's going to play. We just haven't seen a whole lot of him at the NHL level, but Torts has decided he's going to put his best guys out there, and he thinks, I believe right now, that Foudy is one of those guys. So it would not be a huge surprise if Liam Foudy gets out there. They've put him in some pretty advantageous situations as far as the lineup so far in camp. So, if he's out there, I think he's going to play some big minutes as well. He played a game against Tampa Bay earlier this year. He played against Buffalo, looked the part in both of those games, and I think they trust him. So I think he's going to get some pretty big minutes.
All right. Tortorella, you know what? He's sometimes always in a grumpy mood. Which players are not in shape in his opinion?
That is the good question. And he did say today that there are 2 or 3 guys that are just not where they need to be to get ready for this thing. And they need to get there in the next, basically week and a half. He obviously did not mention any of those names. He's not going to do that. So it's hard to really speculate without knowing for sure. But I think he asked for a lot from his big players. And especially, and I mentioned the youth on this team, so many of the key players on this team are young. 25 years or under. I think 10 of probably the 18 skaters that are going to be out there on the ice in the first game are going to be 25 or younger, and that includes names like Seth Jones, who's probably their best their best player. Zach Werenski, who led the NHL in defenseman scoring this year with 20 goals. He's still just 22 years old, or I think he just turned 23 this past weekend. Pierre-Luc Dubois is 22 years old. Oliver Bjorkstrand is just turned 25. So, their key players in a lot of situations are still young guys who I think are still at times, some of them are still kind of getting used to that day in, day out grind. And so he's going to ride those guys, but I think that's also probably what has made them so good and how they've improved so much under Tortorella and become players that anybody in the National Hockey League would love to have, is because they've been run along by Tortorella, and sometimes it's tough love. I think sometimes the image of Torts being kind of the grumpy guy gets a little bit overblown, but he certainly can be that guy. There was a time in practice today on Thursday where they started out and he wasn't happy, and he let him hear it. Sometimes that does get overblown though as well. But so he's on some guys right now, and I guess we'll kind of see who those guys are as we go forward, and we'll see if those guys turn it around and get ready. Yeah,
for sure. Obviously, the player that can't be in shape is Josh Anderson. Is he completely out and he can't come back at all these playoffs?
Well, he is with the team right now. He is skating on his own and doing some rehab. I would not expect him certainly to play against Toronto in this series. He had shoulder surgery in March. There was like a 4 to 6 month rehab on that. So he's kind of right in the middle of where you would expect to be as far as rehab goes. But they wanted to bring him in. They wanted to have him here, especially with all the quarantine rules that are around. If he joined the team later, it would be kind of a tough scenario where he'd have to spend a lot of time kind of off the ice. And so they wanted him to be with the team really to be ready to go. And then they can also have him rehab here. But it does not look as though he's going to play against Toronto. And it really remains to be seen, when he'd be able to come back. But if he was able to come back, his combination of size, speed, power, physical play, played really well in the playoffs last year against Tampa Bay. He really wore out some of those Lightning players. And, they'd love to have him back. It's just a matter of when it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. What are their chances against the Leafs? How does Columbus beat the Leafs?
They're going to have to beat the Leafs, I think, by keeping them low scoring. I mean, this is the quintessential offense versus defense matchup in this series. And obviously Toronto is the offensive team when you think of guys like the Marners and Tavares and Austin Matthews of the world. Whereas the Blue Jackets were one of the best defensive teams in the league this year. They finished third in the league in goals against. They also had a stretch really from December into January, about a 2-month stretch where they were only giving up about 1.5, 1.6 goals per game, where they had one of the best stretches really in recent memory of any team defensively. They're hard-nosed. They come at you. They battle for every inch of ice. They've got some skilled players, and a lot of those guys are coming back from injury, and it'll be really nice to have them. But they don't. The reality is they don't have Austin Matthews. They don't have John Tavares. And so it's going to be a clash of styles, and whichever team gets to their game first is going to be the team that ends up winning it. The Blue Jackets, they scored some goals last year in the playoffs when they beat Tampa Bay. They ended up with 19 in that series in a 4-game sweep, but they also had Artemi Panarin at that time as well. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want to totally discount their ability to score goals, but their style is going to be to take away time and space and really try to frustrate Toronto and then, try to win these games 3-2 or 2-1. Can they do it, especially after all this time off? I think that's really the question. When teams haven't played together that much, you have that time away from the ice. Can you come back and play, that defensive style that you need to play right away? Time will tell. If they can't do it, they're probably going to lose the series. But if they find it quickly, then I would say they have a pretty good chance to win this one. And it's really just going to come down to that, whichever team finds their game the quickest.
Which player are Leaf fans going to be really pissed off with? Is it Foligno or is it somebody else?
Nick's probably up there. He's hard to play against. He's not afraid to drop the gloves. I mean, he's generally a hard but fair player. But he's going to be gritty. He's going to be grinding. He's not afraid to back down from anybody. So he's probably at the top of the list. Boone Jenner is probably in that same way. A hardcore, knows only one speed, and that speed is hard. I think he's a guy that's also really hard to play against. And so those are guys that come to mind right at the top of my head. David Savard also is a really, tough customer as well. A really, responsible stay-at-home defensive player. Big beard, just looks the part as a hockey player. He's not really an in-your-face guy, but he can be if he needs to be. And so I think those are guys that kind of stand out there. I'm trying to look at my roster here and see if anybody else kind of fits that bill. But, if Josh Anderson were to play, that would be the number one guy, I think. But unfortunately for the Blue Jackets, he's out. So there's some snarl in this group, but it's not what it once was, probably as people would think of the 15 to 20 years ago NHL. But guys like Foligno and Jenner are going to come at you, and they're going to come at you in waves.
Which Blue Jacket player would you consider being that one that the whole team kind of hinges on? If this player plays really well or really poorly, they'll win or lose.
I think right now it's Cam Atkinson. He's one of the top scoring players in the history of the franchise. He scored 41 goals last year to tie a record for the Blue Jackets. He's been kind of the heart and soul of this team in a lot of ways because he's an undersized guy, but he comes in and he battles his butt off every day, and he has a chip on his shoulder, which is, I think, kind of what has made him so successful as an undersized guy. But he, frankly, just did not have a great season this year. Finished with 12 goals. He was injured for part of that, and I think that was one of the main reasons why he finished with 12 goals. But he did have a slow start as well. Right when he was finding his game was when the injuries kind of started. But if Cam Atkinson is scoring, this is a very different team. If they're able to get some offensive output out of him, that makes it easier to play that defensive style and easier to win those games 3-2 and 2-1 if he's chipping in. But if he's struggling to score goals and doesn't have the energy that he usually provides, then it's a little bit harder of a road for the Blue Jackets. So I'd say that's a guy that really kind of jumps out to me is if Cam comes out and scores goals, it's going to be a lot easier for this team to win. And if he doesn't, it's going to be a lot harder for this team to win.
Mm-hmm. How far could Columbus go?
That's an interesting question. I think they could go far, honestly, just because this is such a weird scenario. I have a feeling it's going to be one of those kind of situations where we're going to get some weird things happening in this playoff year, just with all the time off and everybody trying to find their game and not really having the exhibition games and certainly not having the usual regular season that you'd have. It's going to be a weird year. So, I mean, there's going to be some dark horses, I think, that make runs. And I could see the Blue Jackets doing it. I think they're going to get really good goaltending. They play so well defensively. They know what their style is. They know what their identity is. They're basically 8 deep on the blue line. So, they don't have to necessarily worry about injuries there. So they've got a real strength in that defense, which usually plays well in playoff time. It's just a matter of if they score enough goals. But if they do score enough goals, people sort of undersold this team, coming into the season, and everyone, focused on what they lost. And certainly you'd love to have Artemi Panarin, and he's a Hart Trophy finalist, and they made a huge effort to re-sign him, but he wanted to go to New York, which makes sense. But you look around this team, you've got Seth Jones and you've got Zach Werenski and, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Atkinson and Oliver Bjorkstrand's become one of the most underrated scorers in the league. There's a lot of guys on this team people would love to have, and there's some real talent on this team. It's young, it's getting older, it's getting more mature, but there's some really good players there. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're a surprise team, but like I say, they've just got to be able to score enough goals.
All right, Jeff. Thank you for coming on the show. You can find him on Twitter @JacketsInsider. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Let's talk some Florida Panthers hockey. Now we have David Dwork. He covers the Panthers for WPLG Local 10 and has the podcast Chirping the Cats. You can find him on Twitter @David Dwork. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
All right, so you don't think the Panthers fans would want to get Lafreniere?
Well, no, I think anybody would be happy to get Lafreniere, but I think the Panthers fans want success in the postseason more than anything right now. Like, it's not like they're a team that is dying for their superstar, Lafreniere away from taking the next step. The roster they have in place should be good enough to take the next step on its own. This is a team that hasn't won a postseason series since 1996. Mm-hmm. A lot of Panthers fans weren't even born at that point. So, yeah, I think we'll take the success over, any player at this point.
Oh, I know. I was really pissed that one year when I took half my fantasy team for the playoffs were Panthers. And then that John Tavares, I was pissed off even when the Leafs brought him here in Toronto. I was like, damn you, I hope you do that again. But he hasn't yet so far. I hope this year is the year. But that pissed me off because I actually had Panthers going at least semi-far going that year.
That was a rough series. And that team was, that had Yadr was on that team. Luongo was the goaltender of that team. Mm-hmm. I think there's only 5 guys on the current roster that were on that team in 2016.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was tough. And I don't know how familiar you are outside of South Florida, but the whole, Trocheck was tripped was that game. Mm-hmm. Panthers had the 1-0 lead late. He's tripped going for the empty net. And all the rest is history.
There was, I remember so many close moments, and it pissed me off too. All right, the Panthers, I feel they could be really sneaky good, and people aren't looking at them right now. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so. As I said before, I think that they're built with the roster they have in place. They're built for a playoff run. They can score. That's one thing that they showed throughout the season. This is a team that can put the puck in the net, top to bottom, from the top line, Barkov Dadonov guys all the way to the bottom. The Noah Charis, Mark Pisic's, 33 goals between the two of them. So the question has always been defense. Now, the last few games before the pause were 3 of the best defensive games they had played all year. They appeared to be turning a corner. The meeting was held. So it really looked like they were moving in the right direction. So now the question is, can they recapture that form now, 4 months later? The message from the team has been, yes, they're working everything. They're watching video. They're relearning their systems. They're kind of reinstalling that into their minds. And so can they make, absolutely, they can be a team that can make a run. But just like anybody else, things have to fall into place. But everything is in place currently to do it. I would not be surprised to see the Panthers make it to the second or third round.
Bobrovsky, he didn't look like he was too good out of the box, but he seems like he works out like a maniac. How is he ready?
Bob's ready to play. There's no doubt about that. Now, one thing with Bobrovsky, and not to like try to be an excuse for him or anything, but if you just look traditionally, when a goaltender moves to a new team, it's always an adjustment period. You go back to maybe Ben Bishop when his first year in Dallas was really rough, and he's been a Vezina guy ever since. So with Bob, he's coming from a team in Columbus that put a major emphasis on their play in their own zone, maybe sometimes to the detriment of their offensive game. And they really kind of relied on those low scoring outcomes. Whereas with the Panthers, talking about what kind of a high scoring team they are, Joe Quenneville coaches a much more transitional team where, it's attack, maybe leaving a little bit to be desired in the defensive end. So it's just an adjustment period for Bobrovsky. But as you said, this is a guy that works out like a maniac. It's well known. His regimens are in a class of their own, the way that he takes care of his body and the way that he works, whether it's in the season or during the off season. So he will certainly be ready. It'll be interesting to see, as you say, the goaltenders kind of struggle in their first year in new teams at times. Well, now he's had basically an off season to take care of himself, to review everything. He's been communicating with Panthers goalie coach Rob Tallis throughout this entire, the last few months. So I'm curious to see when the games start, is this the same Bob that's kind of letting goals through him a little bit, which is very uncharacteristic of a confident goaltender. When they're going through your arms and legs, that's when things aren't really working right. Or are we going to get, the Bob that was a brick wall in the postseason last year when he took Columbus past Tampa into the second round? So, I'm curious to see what it is, but whatever happens with Bob, physically, I'm sure he'll be ready.
Other than Bobrovsky, who is that X factor that the Panthers have that could be a big, turning point for them going into these playoffs and maybe even taking them further?
I'm the first name that pops in my mind. It might come as a surprise from the outside, but it's Sasha Barkov. Just because his season was not very characteristic of his recent years. He was inconsistent. He went into the pause on a 6-game scoring drought, which for Barkov, 6 games is like an eternity. So if he can be the consistent contributor that he's shown to be in the past, in addition to the way that they've been playing offensively, I think that could be a huge X factor. If you can get Barkov, the guy who's like a point per game player, if he shows up for the playoffs, in addition to the way they've been playing, that would be a huge X factor.
Coach Q, how much has the team changed under him, and are they ready to fully play his system?
It's been a process throughout the year, learning Q systems for sure. It's been a conversation with guys as the year progressed. It's just a matter of once you learn something, it's making it from I learned it to muscle memory where I don't even have to think about it, where I can just react. And that, we talked about the process. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. You could see as the year went on, different areas that they were working on, whether it be breaking out of the defensive end, whether it be assignments, whether it be outnumbering guys in a certain area of the ice, knowing what zone you're supposed to cover. It's just there's so many aspects of Q's defensive game. And what I learned as I tried to study it as the year went on was that his defensive game is so focused on an offensive aspect. Basically, it's possess the puck. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there talking about Q systems. But yeah, basically, it's the pause presents a unique opportunity for the guys to really study up and learn things that maybe as the season went on and things are coming fast, they didn't have a chance to really hone in on. So, as we said with Bobrovsky, it's very curious to see how that's going to translate when they actually get to the games. And what I'm really curious to see in that exhibition game that all the teams are going to play is just how sound guys look or how maybe sloppy guys look. Because I think when you see like how sharp a team might look in that game, it'll be an indication of how they're going to look when we get to the qualifiers.
What are their chances in the play-in round against the Islanders?
I think they're pretty good. I mean, it's an interesting matchup of a team that kind of leaned on their offense during the season against a team that's known for playing shutdown hockey. I mean, the Islanders are a team, I think the key for Florida to beat the Islanders simply is to get that first goal or to get a lead. The Islanders are night and day the way they play when they're holding a lead to when they're coming from behind. For such a sound defensive team, they open up significantly when they're trying to play catch up. So the Panthers, I think, will be strong starts to the game, getting ahead of the Islanders and not letting them get into their comfort zone, which is just shutting everything down and gumming up the neutral zone.
Dadonov, I think he could really break out here. And a lot of people, I guess, around the league don't know what he has. What does he have, and is he going to be sneaky underrated?
Dadonov is kind of an all-around guy. He's very sneaky quick with the moves he can make and how he operates in tight spaces. But I mean, his playmaking ability is, second to none on the team. He doesn't really get the kind of accolades that maybe other guys get because of the guys he's playing with. I mean, throughout the year, he spent almost the entire season playing on a line with Barkov and Jonathan Huberdeau. So, you might get overshadowed, but this is a guy that scored at least 25 goals 3 straight years. I think he's averaged about 60 points in his 3-year contract that he's just expiring with the Panthers. And he's just a smart guy. Like, he goes to the smart areas on the ice. That's why he's on their top power play, working that bumper roll in the middle, because he's really smart at setting up his players, knowing where he should set himself up. So yeah, he could definitely be a sneaky guy that could show up and surprise some people that maybe weren't aware of just how good he was when these playoffs start.
How far could Florida go?
I think the answer to that will rest on what kind of situation they see with their goaltending and their defensive play. I think it's really going to depend on that. If Bob shows up as, the comfortable, confident goaltender that's basically stopping everything he needs to and some of the stuff that he really shouldn't have any business stopping, then yeah, the sky's the limit for this team. Roster-wise, I mean, they've got 4 lines that they can roll. They've got I love their 4th line just because of how it balances so much offense and so much of the intangibles. Speaking of Noah Chari centering Mark Pysyk and Colton Sevier. But really, it's just top to bottom. It's really a well-rounded lineup. So as much as I hate to put the pressure on the goaltender, I really think in this case specifically, it comes down to Bob more so than maybe a lot of others, just based on the way the season has played out for him.
You can find him on Twitter at David Dwork. Thank you for coming on the show, David.
Hey, man, my pleasure.
Now let's dive into the Montreal Canadiens. We have Jared Book. He's the deputy managing editor at Habs EOTP. That's Habs Eye on the Prize. You can find him on Twitter at Jared Book. Welcome back to the show, Jared.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So, do you think this Habs fan base wants to tank for a chance to get Lafreniere?
Definitely a segment of it does. Absolutely. I think, if you ask any of the bottom teams at this point, would you rather have a 12.5% chance in the draft lottery or, probably less chance of that against, in Montreal's case, Boston or, Philadelphia, Tampa.
Yeah.
I would think most of them would even if they do beat Pittsburgh, they're probably not going to make it very far.
Yeah.
So in that case, I think that there's definitely a segment of fans that want to lose. At the same time, I don't think all of them are going to be actively cheering against them.
Yeah.
I think, because what you play to win the Stanley Cup, you don't play to try and win the draft lottery. So are there more downsides to them winning than there would be in a normal situation? Yeah, you can look at it that way. But, if you gave Montreal fans a chance to, at the beginning of the season, to say you have a best of 5 series to get into the playoffs, and if you lose, you get a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a pretty good situation for the team to be in, all things considered. So yeah, I don't think, you play to make the playoffs. That's what Mark Bergevin has said, when they first announced the format, and you have to look at it that way. The goal is to win the Stanley Cup. The goal is not to collect as many prospects as you can. So
yeah.
In that sense, I think that there's some fans that definitely would want Alexis Lafreniere.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't feel comfortable saying all of them, because it's not that at all, but definitely a segment of it.
What would it mean to this franchise to draft a first overall pick, a phenom, which could be from a suburb of Montreal?
Yeah, I mean, that's almost a secondary aspect of it, right? I mean, a lot of people are looking at it and saying, wow, local kid, but I think the more important thing for this team is getting a player like Lafreniere. He can be Finnish or Swedish or American. I don't think it would matter much.
Yeah.
I think that Lafreniere brings something that this team's been looking for years. If depending how you feel about Alex Kovalev's time in Montreal, and he was past his prime at that point.
Yeah.
Before Kovalev, who was the last forward to really be a dynamic forward in Montreal? And I'm struggling. Looking at at least the 80s, to think of that. Even the Stanley Cup team in '93 didn't have they had Vincent Danfus, who was probably the best scorer at that point.
That's the first name that came to mind.
But I mean, you wouldn't think. You wouldn't call Danfus a dynamic player. I mean, he was a very good NHL player. I think he was a top pick as well when he was drafted. But you wouldn't call him a dynamic player, at least not in today's terms. Everyone put up 100 points back then, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, I think obviously there's personally I'm a little bit more concerned about the local aspect, because I think that might put more pressure on him in Montreal than it would if he was drafted pretty much anywhere else. But at the same time, you're talking with by far one of he is the best player in the draft. Whether he Byfield could have more potential, and depending on how you feel about a couple of the other guys, but at this point right now, he's the best player in the draft. So the fact that he's from Montreal or the area is an added bonus, I would say. But and maybe that's also stoking a little bit more of the the fires from the first question about having a chance. If it was say Taylor Hall and not Alexis Lafreniere, would fans really be as excited? I don't know. Obviously, if it was a Connor McDavid or a Sidney Crosby, they would be. But I think that when you look at that, I think it would be a huge boost to the fans and to the feeling in the city. But I think that the more important thing is that that there hasn't been anybody like him on the team in a long time, and I think that's the more interesting angle than the local aspect. But both play a part, absolutely.
Yeah. Domi, he's playing. What was his decision behind this? Is he doing anything different also to kind of extra protect himself against the virus, since he is a type 1 diabetic?
I don't know if he's doing anything specifically differently, but what the team is doing a little bit. They're being a little more cautious than I think other teams have been, because they had two positive tests in the last when training camp started, and for about 4 or 5 practices, they had 5 guys who were just skating by themselves apart from the team. And the reason they had that is because they were in contact with one of the people who tested positive. So they had no symptoms, they had no positive tests, but they still separated them just in case, until their test came back that they had four tests in a row that were negative. So I think that the team knows the situation, but I know that Domi, and he said it himself, that he talked to a lot of doctors, he talked to a lot of people, and there's obviously a risk, but it's a risk that he's comfortable with. I think he said himself that there's no safer place than the way that the NHL is going through this. Like, you can go to a store or a grocery store and face more risk than you would necessarily have in the bubble. So I think that he's taking a lot of things into consideration, but obviously it's a risk that he's comfortable with, and the team is obviously concerned and making sure that they do everything, maybe even above and beyond what's necessarily in the rules, in the guidelines for the return to play.
Yeah, and you mentioned the two players that tested positive. Even Bassau tweeted out that Xavier Lett confirms that he tested positive for COVID-19, said he felt no symptoms or subsequently tested negative several times, and he was isolated, of course, and he feels better. Also, I think you mentioned also Kulak as well.
Yeah, and if the NHL reported 2 positive tests, and both of those happened to be Montreal. Just the way it ended up. So, yeah, both missed the first week of training camp. Kulak actually said that he did have some symptoms, but he's they both skated yesterday. They both skated on Friday as well, and they are taking regular shifts, and they're back now. They passed the test they needed to pass, the protocols. As soon as you have a positive test, even if you're not showing any symptoms, the guidelines are pretty strict.
Yeah,
and that's what Willette was saying. He didn't even know if he said he was never worried because he didn't think he had it. He had no symptoms. He just tested positive once, and then obviously had to test negative until he can get back on the ice, and that's what he did. So, it's obviously precaution is good, and even what's interesting with the return to play guidelines is that even showing symptoms is the same as a positive test.
Yeah.
So it's good that they have that in place, and keeping everyone safe, and obviously with Max Domi, we talked about it before, the precautions need to be a little bit more than they would be normally. Not that they're not safe otherwise, but obviously there's that factor as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they're taking these precautions. It's good sign by the organization and the NHL. All right, let's talk about some good stuff. It's playoffs are coming. Who are we going to see for this run? Which Carey Price?
That's a good question. If I knew the answer, I'd probably if I was a gambler, I'd probably put some money on it. So, or at least feel a little bit more confident. No one has any idea what's going to happen. Anyone who bets on the NHL playoffs, especially the first round or the qualifying round, is crazy in my book. I wouldn't, even maybe after a couple of games, you might have a little bit more better idea of what's going to happen. But yeah, I'm not making any predictions, or least of all putting money on it. But Carey Price has a lot to play for.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. He's a guy who has come under fire for his play, whether it's his fault or at least his numbers. He's come under fire for his numbers. Obviously, he is in the second year of a huge contract extension, and he hasn't been playing up to it. So, you talk about guys like Price and Shea Weber is another one. And these guys have pride, and I think that the effort has always been there on both those guys, but I think that there's a little added pressure to perform, because that's why they are on the Montreal Canadiens, is to perform in the big moments. And this team may have not expected to be in this situation, to have a series, to a postseason series, whether it's considered playoffs or not. And I think now that they have that opportunity, there is pressure on guys like Carey Price. And let's face it, if Carey Price is not good, not even great, if he's not good, the Canadiens have absolutely no chance to win this series.
Yeah.
He has to be at least good for them to have a chance. If he's great, they have a chance to win the series. So the pressure is on him, definitely. But I think that Carey Price will not be the reason they lose the series. That's about as close as I'll get to a prediction going forward with the series starting.
All right. What are their chances in the play-in round against Pittsburgh?
I think probably better than most people are giving them. I'm not saying that they're good or even a favorite. They're obviously a huge underdog. But, the way people are saying that they have absolutely no chance, might be right, but in a best of 5 series, you only have to win 3 games, and we have no idea what kind of form the Penguins will be in. We don't have no idea what form the Canadians will be on. So I think that's a little bit of an equalizer, where it's not like they've been playing hockey for the last 3 months. They haven't. They have one game in the week, and then on Saturday they're playing game 1. And so, yes, Sidney Crosby missed a couple of these at practice as well. We have no idea, how close to 100% he is. So, do they have a chance? Yes, they have a chance. I think that there's maybe the opportunity for a lot of players who a lot of people don't see as top players to really get the attention they deserve. And I'm thinking of Philip Danault, probably top of that. He's going to have a showcase against Sidney Crosby.
Yeah,
that's going to be his role in this series. And I think that, a lot of people don't see him day to day, don't realize how good he is, or how good that whole line is with Thomas Tatar and Brendan Gallagher. The statistics show they are one of the top possession lines in the NHL. And I don't think that's a trio that you would think of.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good showcase for them. And, Pittsburgh is not a very deep team, especially up front. So, if you look at Montreal's third and fourth lines, I might give the advantage to Montreal in that sense, but obviously Pittsburgh's top 2 lines are really, really good. Yeah. So, it's really tough. It's going to come down to goaltending. Obviously Pittsburgh has 2 really good goaltenders in Matt Murray, who is expected to start. They also have Tristan Jarry. So, they have that option. If Murray doesn't play well, they can go to Jarry and kind of catch up that way. But I'll say this: if Montreal wins game 1, their chances will go up a lot more in the eyes of a lot of people. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily going to be a sweep. But they're heavy underdogs. Let's not hide things here. They're heavy underdogs, but I think they can win a game, maybe even 2, depending on factors like Carey Price and obviously. But it's time is an equalizer, right? I mean, they've had 3. Claude Julien has had like a month or 2 to, once the rumors started working about this, to plan for Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. He's had time to prepare and look at things, and I think that's a little bit of an equalizer because Pittsburgh doesn't have to necessarily change their game for Montreal, but Montreal can change their game for Pittsburgh, and it can be an equalizer. But no, Montreal's an underdog. That's 100% the case.
I'm glad you mentioned Danault. I've been talking about him for a couple of years, that he should be at least in the conversation for the Selke. But continuing, Kotkaniemi, he's back up from the AHL. What kind of impact is he going to make on this team?
I think he also has an opportunity for a showcasing series, because if you look at the way the lineup is right now, he's skating with Paul Byron and Arturi Lehkonen, and which is basically the third line for the Canadians. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the line that Claude Julien wants to play against Malkin. So if you assume that Danault gets Crosby, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes with Kotkaniemi against Malkin, and that could be a interesting kind of opportunity for him. Claude Julien has been really pumping his tires in camp so far, saying his skating's improved. A lot of things have improved. Paul Byron is one of the fastest skaters in the NHL. Arturi Lehkonen is one of the best defensive wingers in the NHL as well. Another guy who doesn't get much credit. Even in Montreal, he doesn't get much credit. Reminds you a little bit of when Lars Eller played for the team. He brings those things that give you a chance to win. He just doesn't score very much, and that's what fans tend to focus on. But that's a sneaky kind of third line that can maybe trip up the top 2 lines of the Penguins. But it's going to be a big challenge, and there's a chance that Kotkaniemi will fail in that regard, but he's going to have the opportunity to do so. And he has 2 wingers that are who are good to help him in that kind of goal, if that's the way that they move forward.
All right, we will see. You can find him on Twitter at Jared Book. Jared, Thanks for talking Habs on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now on the show, talking New York Islanders, Rob Taub. He's digital producer at New York Post and a writer at Isles blog. You can find him on Twitter at @rtaub_. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thanks for having me, Pete.
Do you think this Isles fan base wants their team to tank for Lafreniere?
I want to say no, but I know there are a few people that I know and I've spoken with when the draft lottery unfolded that said, you know what, why not? Like, this is a whole different ballgame with the playoffs and everything this year, with this summer. But he would be exactly what the Islanders need as a winger, and they need wings. They haven't had a lot of good ones in the past few years. But he would totally change. He would change the dynamic of the team. But on the other side, the Islanders have a chance just as good as any team in this 24-team tournament to win the Cup. Do I think they will win? I don't like to make predictions. I think they have as good a shot as anybody. And, I don't know, tanking for a guy that, he's going to be the number one pick and everything like that. But this is a chance to win a Cup. It doesn't come around very often. So, people who want them to tank, I'm not in that boat. I'm more on the boat of let's see what they can do in the playoffs. And if they go far, great. If they don't, then they still have a shot at getting Lafreniere. So to each his own.
Mm-hmm. All right. What do you think their chances are against Florida in the play-in round?
I think they have a really good chance to move on. I think the Islanders have a few more significant advantages over the Panthers. I think now that the Islanders are going to have a healthy defense going forward, and they'll have a healthy forward group, and they'll have their fourth line intact, they'll have their first line intact. It's the two middle lines that maybe could cause a little bit of a stir. But I think that they do have the better shot at beating Florida. Florida is very top heavy. Yeah, I don't see much from them at their bottom six forwards. Their defense, I know they have Keith Yandel, I know they have Aaron Ekblad, but behind that, there's not much to really talk about. The Islanders are getting back Adam Pelech. They're getting back healthy Johnny Boychuk. They're going to have 10. They're bringing 10 defensemen with them to Toronto, and out of those 10, 6 are going to play. So Barry Trotz will have a number of options he could go with. After game 1 or after game 2 or after however long the series goes, he will have a plethora of options to use, and that's a really big advantage for an Island team that their mentality is defense first. And I like the goaltending wise. I think Bobrovsky is the better. I think that's where Florida could have the advantage. But Thomas Greiss, whether he gets the start or Semyon Varlamov for the Islanders, they're coming in fresh. They're going to have 2 fresh goaltenders. Greiss, he won them that series 4 years ago, so he has history. He's been good against Florida in the regular season. Varlamov was good against Florida in the regular season this year too. So the goaltending you could split it down the middle, but I think in terms of full team, everything on the table, I think the Islanders are the better team.
I don't want to bring this up being a Leafs fan, but JT was insanely amazing that series against the Panthers, and he took me out because I
hate to say it.
I had the Panthers, and JT pissed me off that series.
Well, just to look back at that, if you go back and watch that series, the Islanders were not the better team. They capitalized on their chances when they needed to, but Florida dominated them for a majority of the series. But when the Islanders needed their guys to step up, and JT was one of them, even though I don't like to say that anymore, they came through. So, and if I look at it, this series going back 4 years ago, there's still a lot of the same names on both of these teams. Can't go tit for tat on each one, but these two teams, they know each other. They were in a playoff series a few years ago, and it was fast, it was physical, and they played every game to the wire. So it should be a very interesting series when they drop the puck next Saturday. If it goes, I'll be surprised if it goes 5. I think if it goes 5, then the goaltending or one of the two teams' offenses just completely exploded because the Islanders have the better defense, like I said, and then the Panthers have the better offense, and then goaltending, it's a split down the middle. Bobrovsky, he did his thing last year, but that's only 1 year. In the past, he's known for choking in the playoffs. And you could also put that on the teams that were put in front of him, but those playoff ghosts don't just go away very quickly. So, if the Islanders get in his head like the way every other team has in his playoff career, the Islanders have a great chance of moving on.
Yeah, I think this is a really sleeper series in terms of people paying attention to. It's going to be pretty intense, and I can't wait to watch it. Other people, guys that are listening right now, make sure you watch this series. It's going to be good. In terms of being that impact player, who is it? Who's going to be that beast for the Islanders, especially if they go deep?
Well, it has to be Matthew Barzal. That's the main guy. He's their star. He's the guy who's the engine who drives the team forward. Last week he said he feels good. He told reporters he feels good. He feels fresh. He had 4 months to rest and recuperate, and he was really, really starting to come on when right before the season went on hiatus. He was literally I put in one of my articles last week. He was carrying the Islanders. That him in that first line of Jordan Eberle and Anders Lee, those guys were carrying the offense because they didn't have anything behind him. But now I think with if he gets a little bit more help from the rest of the forwards, but if he could just play his game, and I saw it last year when the stage is set, he loves to play. He comes up big. He played big against the Penguins. And he played well. He definitely played well against Carolina, even though Carolina figured a way to shut him down. But I think Barzal, he's definitely going to be the X factor. You could also go with Adam Pelech. This team, the Islanders, were not the same team without Adam Pelech. It was written in stone just how much different of a team they are and how much more vulnerable they are when he's not around and he's not on the ice. So I look at those two guys as the impact players. One of my sleepers is Devon Taves. Devon Taves could definitely be a sleeper in this series. He had a great playoff last year. He was fantastic. For a rookie, he looked like he was a 5 or 6 year veteran. So, and question is, we don't know if he's actually going to be on the blue line because, like I said in the beginning, the Islanders are bringing 10 defensemen with them, and those 5 and 6 spots where normally Taves would be, because their top 4 is pretty much set with Pelech, Ryan Pulak, Johnny Boychuk, and Nick Leddy. Those 5 and 6 spots are still up for grabs. So Taves, if he plays, I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder because nothing is guaranteed right now.
Yeah, you're talking about that defense, and a guy who could really step up, and he's looking good so far in their camp, is Noah Dobson. How much of an impact and how good does he look?
He's looked fantastic from what the coaching staff has said, from everything I've read, everything I've heard from the reporters that have been at camp. As a rookie, I'm very impressed because you take that 4-month layoff and it could totally, change a guy's future. Well, I wouldn't say change a guy's, but it could change the outlook of a season for a rookie. But he stayed here on Long Island he stayed here on Long Island, and he worked out with Dennis Seidenberg, who was a former defenseman, but he's also like a strength coach. And he looked like a picture I saw last week, he looked like he filled out a little bit. Oh, wait, no, that was a picture from this week, my mistake. It looked like he filled out a little bit. It looks like he put on a little bit of muscle, but if he's doing it on the ice, that's even more of a benefit for the Islanders. That gives him an even better advantage because it's another defenseman that they have at their disposal. And the other thing, he's a young guy. He's 20 years old. So throwing him into the fire like that bodes well for his long-term development, because there was probably going to be what was probably going to happen if the season ended the way it was supposed to, if the Islanders were in the playoffs or not. He was going to start the next season in Bridgeport to get more games, because the Islanders had no choice but to keep him on the team this year because it couldn't go to Bridgeport because of his age, and they didn't want to send him back to juniors because he had nothing left. There was nothing left for him to give there. He accomplished everything he could. So I think with him possibly stealing a spot, I think it adds a little bit of a youth to an Islander blue line that, sometimes they could lose themselves a little. The veterans could sometimes, they could slow down a little bit, and they did towards when the pandemic hit. But a guy like Dobson, who was just starting to find his game, and he was getting more and more comfortable when the game stopped, now you give him a chance to really to do something special, playing in the playoffs, whether it's for 1 series or whether it's for 4 series. He could definitely do some big things. I don't want to compare it to what Cale Makar did for Colorado or what Charlie McAvoy did, but it can happen. it could happen. A guy like Dobson, who's still a little bit an unknown, and Florida's not going to be paying much attention to him. They're going to put their main focus on the Puloks, the Pelliks, and all the other guys. So Dobson could sneak under the radar and definitely do some good things in this series.
It's good to hear. I think this playoffs suits Anders Lee. How big of an impact will he have for this team and for the stretch that they go on?
I think he has to be the guy who was the 40 goal scorer. What I saw from Lee this year was, I think, and I know he signed that big contract, but it looked like he did take a step back. He looked like he wasn't getting those same goals he was used to getting in those areas. Most of his goals came on the power play the last 2 years before this year. And then this year he was like very ineffective on the power play. That's his bread and butter. He's the guy who stands in front of the net, takes all the punishment, but you didn't see that much from him this year. And, he did, he did have 20 goals. He scored another 20 goals this year, but they were soft 20 goals. They weren't the ones that, say, oh, I'm impressed by that. So a series like this one where Florida, they had heavier forward, Florida has a lot of heavy forwards and they've got physical defensemen, and the Islanders don't have many skilled forwards or very many heavy forwards. Lee is going to be one of those guys that they're going to need him to really be on his game, because he's also on the first line, and the Islanders are really going to bend on that. Barry Trotz is going to depend on that first line to do a lot of the damage if he doesn't get help from the bottom six or from the second line with Brock Nelson and Josh Bailey and whoever else is put there. So I think Lee has to have as much impact as anyone in this series, and I think he can. You don't want to. The thing with the Islanders, and I saw it last year. It might not be a big thing, but he's a new father. He just had a baby girl this season, and you get that extra oomph from having that little bit more motivation. I know it sounds a little cliche, but he can use that motivation of being a girl dad, but having that dad strength and use it in the playoffs.
All right. We're going to have you back on the show to talk Barzal and hopefully a new contract after the playoffs. You can find him on Twitter.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah. You can find him on Twitter at @RobTaub_. Thank you for coming on the show, Rob.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I want to thank all our guests today. Thank you for your time, and we'll have some of them back as the playoffs continue. I hope all you listeners got a better look at your team, and of course, some of the other teams which are gearing up for this interesting first round, or if that's what you call it. Are you excited? I know I am. I'm eager. I'm excited. I'm also cautiously optimistic. The numbers are looking pretty good too so far, so I hope that trend continues. That's one episode done. Second one's coming up in a couple of days. Double play-in preview episodes. Of course, enjoy and go check that one coming out. I hope you enjoyed this episode, folks. Go to JablamSports.com to see all our podcasts and even game notes for every episode. You'll get info and links to all the things we mentioned on this show. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this show with 3 friends. If you want to contact us, or if you have any questions or ideas for the show, you can follow me on Twitter at Russian98, that's RUSSIAN 98, or the entire team at Jablam Sports. You can also use the hashtag Jablam Sports, that's JABLAM Sports. You can also contact us on our contact page, jablamsports.com/contact. Also, if you like wrestling, go check out our new wrestling podcast, Pro Wrestling Explode, presented by Jablam Sports, where Pepperoni, Miranda, and I get into AEW and WWE. We recap, analyze, and recent matches, storylines, pay-per-views, and what's in wrestling news. Thank you, everyone. Shout out. My shout out today is for my mom, Mira. I love you, Mom. Everything you have done for me and continue to do for me enables me to be the best I can, work hard for my goals, and I want to keep growing thanks to you. I love you and all the meals that you've been given me during these tough times that we're all going through. Feels like high school all over again. You're the best, Mims. And to every one of our listeners out there, I'm giving you all a virtual hug. Stay healthy. Listen, be strong, and be yourself.